everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Data Standard Audio Experience. Today on our show, we have Brandon Pinzon, the Chief Security Officer at Argo Group. And today we're just going to be speaking about challenges and recommendations for academia for new data science grads. So welcome to the show, Brandon. It's so great to have you today.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm delighted to be here. So this is a very exciting opportunity for Argo, for us to just share a little bit about what we're doing.
Yeah, definitely. And could you just go ahead and tell us more about your background and introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm the Chief Security Officer for Argo Group. So I oversee the entire security program. Part of that includes data protection and data privacy, as well as many other areas. And so I've been here. Argo is a specialty insurance company, business to business lines effectively. And so we're in the business, of course, of monetizing our data. We use our data to effectively price the unknown and provide a lot of resiliency to our businesses that are our customers, basically. And so, I have a global team. We're in the European Union, UK, South America, Middle East, in Bermuda, all throughout the United States. And we have a lot of data that we use. And so part of that also is Argo has gone through and does a lot of public outreach. And so in my spare time, I love to put knowledge back in the world in a little bit more of a vicarious way. And so I dedicate my time to the St. Mary's University School of Science, Engineering, and Technology. So I serve as an executive advisor to the dean of that college on matters related to data science, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. So we're doing a heck of a lot there to help with the programming and curriculum. And, I think that's a lot of what we're going to talk about. So that's me in a little bit more than a nutshell.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. And I'm sure in a lot of the work that you do, you've seen a lot of different challenges and gaps that you've seen maybe in the academia industry, especially with data science right now, with it being so new. And so what are some of the major gaps that you've seen that you want to talk about today?
Sure. So, it's funny because insurance is still new to me, and I've been in the hosting world, the technology world, and the banking world, and financial services. And though the science and the academia, the academic curriculum and programming is new, the problems have always been there. And effectively what we're doing, and why I'm so passionate about this, is you have faculty and staff that come from your mathematics, your science, your engineering kinds of backgrounds. And then you have the workforce that's demanding data scientists for one reason or another, because it's such a topic. And then in between, you have this gap of folks that are going through an education process, 4 to 6 to 8 years, depending on how you land. And so the idea is to narrow that gap and produce students that are desirable in the workforce. And so part of what we do is we take our resources, go through and say, okay, faculty and staff, professors, that come from these backgrounds, what do you want to know? And so they basically, at St. Mary's, they say, well, we want to understand what the employers want. And we also want to understand, if you were a data scientist or you ended up in a data science profession, you did not typically come from a data science master's or PhD or something along those lines. And so we by putting folks in front of these professionals. So the biggest gaps that we see right now are, if we go through and look at what our graduates are doing, or even there's a fantastic site called Kaggle, which is a self-reporting site for data scientists, machine learning, et cetera. So there's about 3,500 that have participated in it. And in most cases, which is consistent with our hiring as well, about 51% of the folks that are in data science roles have a master's degree. About just under 20% have a PhD. And so that's a long churn time for where the demand of the workforce is. So then you're starting to see, okay, well, if we introduce curriculum that says, here's a Bachelor of Science in data science, would that be desirable? Is there a concentration or a certificate that could get you a data science role? And the truth of the matter is right now, no, it doesn't. Really going in with either a master's or a PhD with experience is where the bar is. And so how do we help with that? So when we go and we have employers come in, of course we ask, what do you want? And they're going through the process of saying, okay, well, we would love folks that come out with soft skills, right? We have technical folks. We'll take any data scientist because we love that. But we really want the soft skills to be able to do storytelling, right? To be able to go through and produce things that's really consumable for the business-minded folks. When we have other folks come in, like that have graduated with a degree in computer science or have moved on to a data science role, what they're stating is they would love to understand how to work with the GitHubs and the source code kinds of things. Right? So that's not something that's necessarily available in most cases. But we have the other thing that's really popular, which is I'd love to understand secure coding techniques. There's a lot of work that's underway. If I work in a regulated space, I wasn't necessarily taught that, and so I would love to understand that. And then the final thing that we really see more often than not is, okay, I would really love to understand how to work in more of like a Scrum or an Agile or some other kind of project management kind of methodology. And so now the professors and the faculty and staff can take that information and figure out how to incorporate that in. It's hard to go through and say, okay, for the soft skills, you got to get your PhD, but then go to Toastmasters, right? That's not necessarily the case, but it's somewhere in between. So those are some of the biggest gaps, I think, is just where the landscape is. You're with a postgraduate degree, and then also shifting left. These are what we're hearing in the academic workforce gap.
Yeah, and that's super interesting to hear that, you mentioned earlier from your findings that a good amount of students going into these data science roles in the future in professions have a lot of PhDs or master's degrees. And I know that right now, a lot of universities throughout the US especially are starting to have more of data science degrees at the bachelor's level. Do you think that maybe that will be a shift in change in the future? Just more employers will be looking for people with bachelors, or do you think the mindset will still stay, no, we need PhD people in our industry? What is your thoughts on that?
So it's interesting because I'm not a data scientist, but I experienced something very similar in the cyber world, right? And so I graduated with computer science as my major, but I ended up in a cyber world. Now you can go through and get graduate and undergraduate as well. So I think you're gonna start to see more of a value in the less than postgraduate level. And it's just how do you bolster that education? You've got your stats, you've got your object-oriented programming, you've got all of these things that are good principles, good foundational principles. Now, the term data scientist is going to change. Even if you graduate with a master's or a PhD, you're typically getting more of a data analysis kind of role, right? You're dealing with more micro things, where data scientists with the requisite experience are dealing with more macro things, so more vast in nature. You're dealing with maybe more business aspects. Just like you wouldn't necessarily graduate in a computer science or a cyber undergrad and get a chief security officer kind of role, there's an evolution there. So I think there'll be more value, and actually you'll start to see data science almost be the new rhetoric. It's not going away, but it's essential. Not having or not being conversant in even some of the more interesting or some of the more basic concepts will leave you behind, especially if you're entering into a technical field.
Yeah, definitely. Great insight there. And what are some other ways that Argo Group has been working closely with universities to really bridge all of these gaps that you've seen in the data science industry?
I think a big part of that is just, in our case, contributing where the universities or in these outreach kinds of functions where they want us to be. And so as an example, there's a fantastic all-women's boot camp that's taking place, and our director of data science, she'll have a fantastic presence there and help emerging talents or folks that are interested in this field make a decision, right? Because it's not an easy field. It's a very challenging field, and to get some of the foundational concepts where they need to be and then to have the mindset is it's really, really an important thing. We have a team of data scientists on staff, and so from a multi-pronged perspective, we want to make sure that we can help influence where this is going, but also receive the benefit of that talent as well. And so it's not just one particular university, but just we are a global team. We have a global presence, we can go back and help in a global way, right? So.
Yeah, definitely. And can you explain maybe some of the use cases of how data has positively impacted your organization?
Sure. So, the end result is that the data ultimately helps generate revenue for us, right? But most importantly, we do that by providing a product that is desirable to our customers and provides a level of comfort, right? It's a transfer of risk. And so, invariably, like if you think about, how we use our data or more creative ways, you've got the data scientists that are effectively creating, experiments, right? You're going through and you've got data and you want a controlled environment and you want to go through and visualize data or have concepts or have a hypothesis and test that in a way that is predictable, but also provides a result that you can replicate. Then you go through and you have our actuaries that go through and effectively see what they need to see to start to price it, to monetize it, to say, look, there's a balance. So, if we price it correctly, everyone wins, right? We win. And by the way, it's not just about the product, but here are the other types of products that we have that help you manage your loss, right? So we don't just want to be able to go through and say, like, here's your policy, but here are the things to think about. Here's the data that supports, okay, like if you're in a particular flood zone area, or if you're in an area that's prone to XYZ kinds of things, here's how you can help manage your loss. And so putting all of that together is the essence of our business. It's really about risk management. And that's our day-to-day. The interesting thing about this world is that it was not something I was fully expecting, right? It's everything you want in terms of the data and being able to not just do this, but also protect that data, right? The identities and intellectual property and the sources of this data. So it's really three things. Number one, being creative with the sources of data, being able to go through and provide the right models that help make it a win-win. And then the third, of course, is making sure that you have the right protections for that data, especially if you're dealing with identities or otherwise.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of different moving parts, as you had mentioned, that we're working with data in your organization. And my final question just has to do with what are your thoughts about the future of how data science education will be changing in the next coming years?
Yeah, I think that as the industry is going to start to not just look for a particular title, they're going to start to diversify. You're going to start to see maybe even more specialization, right? So what was typically, let's just say, back-end database administration, you probably got more of a data engineering function, right? And then as the adoption or the understanding, I'd say, of the AI and machine learning and other things and the legislation and everything else catches up and you find this happy medium, you'll start to see a little bit more specialization in those areas, right? And so what really is separating a data scientist from, let's just say, data analysis and the results, the CAGR results and our experience also in hiring data scientists attribute to this is you have to have experience with some of the machine learning. You have to have exposure to it. And though there's even I think it's a very common thing to start to do NoSQL types of things, you have to have the foundation in SQL. You're going to come across it. You're going to go through the migrations. You're going to go through and have to use those kinds of data sets. So where I think it's going to go is that the knowledge will be a little bit more specialized, no different than when you had technology being one thing and now it's just kind of grown. And you're going to have a lot more diversity and option in being able to look at these areas. And then also when you go in and you even want to specialize in how laws apply to the use of data, right? You don't have to necessarily be a lawyer. You're going to be more of a practitioner, no different than we've seen in the security space. So it's good. In other words, it's a great place to be. It's only going to grow more and more organically. And it's going to get more and more fun because it's always fun to have problems that require deep thought, and that's a big part of this.
Yeah, definitely. And it's been so great to see all the ways that data science can be applied in all of these different problems that we've been solving in the world today. And there's going to be just new problems to be solving in the future as well. So that's really exciting to see. And I wanted to say thank you so much, Brandon, for joining us today on the Data Standard. We're trying to build a community of data enthusiasts and data thought leaders where everyone can just come together, network, and collaborate with each other. So what is something the community can help you do?
I think that carry the torch in terms of if you think and believe like I believe. I heard this great saying, where learning is currency. Well, effectively the bank is in academia, right? And so the more that we can put in there in a way that can put value back into the world, the better. So the opportunity to go through and volunteer your time to those that are either considering entering into a field that you're associated with, mentorship, influencing the programming or the curriculum. If you're provided that opportunity, do that, right? Share your experience and make sure that we understand that, hey, there is a gap and we do have to go through and satisfy the needs of, basically the landscape with skilled talent that might not require 6 to 8 to 4 to whatever years of academic experience. So you have to bolster that. So put knowledge back in the world, take the opportunity to volunteer your time and help, right? Because that's ultimately how we all get better, especially in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. And where can everyone find you online to connect with you?
I am a very boring social media enthusiast. So I'm most active on LinkedIn, and you can find me via LinkedIn.
Yeah, perfect. And to our audience, for more information on the Data Standard, you can find us at www.datastandard.io, as well as on our LinkedIn and YouTube channel. And thank you so much, Brandon, for joining us. It was so great to hear more about your line of work and the things that you're working on today. So thank you so much for being on the show, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
My pleasure. I absolutely enjoyed it.